Today on In the House, I speak with Brett and Naomi Jimison, who left their home in California in search of freedom in the great state of Texas. With no prior building experience, Brett and Naomi decided to build their house out of solid limestone. We discuss why they made the choice to use limestone over wood framing and how the house performs in the summer versus the winter. We also discuss the reason for documenting their build on YouTube, as well as their 5-step guide to get started building your own limestone home. I hope you like this episode. Thanks for listening. Upgrade your construction layouts with Trademarks. These heavy-duty vinyl markers are designed to withstand harsh job site conditions. They're durable, waterproof, and perfect for marking locations for electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and more. Available in trade-specific colors, Trademarks make communication with your team simple, professional, and reliable. Whether you're recording benchmarks, elevations, or centerlines, Trademarks ensure your layouts stay intact, even under heavy traffic. New customers enjoy 15% off at checkout. Visit trademarklayout.com to get yours today. All right, you guys. Well, how the heck are you? How's everything going today?
Good. It's good to meet you for the first time, I guess.
It's nice to finally meet you guys. I've been checking out your profile for a while, and I think what y'all are doing is just phenomenal. I mean, really, y'all are living the American dream, really. I mean, to be able to build your own house, have a couple of kids, raise a family. I mean, can it get any better than that, honestly?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We've been building now for 3 years.
Yeah.
Not this house, but on this land.
Right. Yeah, because you said it kind of started off as you had like a small metal building or a garage maybe, and like a 300 square foot little unit that y'all were living in.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, we bought land and then we moved out here, and we were gonna have somebody else build our stone house, but it fell through. And that same week we decided we still wanted to do the stone house, but it was going to take longer because we've got to, figure out a place to live really quick.
Yeah.
And decided to do it ourselves. And that week we found out, well, maybe 2 weeks later, we found out we were having our first son. So we really were on a timeline to build
incredible.
This metal building. And 300 square feet, brought a newborn there.
Wow. We built, our original plan was to have that metal building be my shop on our property. And that was going to be part of the total build. And what we ended up doing was I ended up just subcontracting out a metal building company to come put up the frame. Then we did all the interior. We put a wall up inside the shop. And so I lost 300 square feet of my shop space, which I've already filled up everything, and I need more space. We put up the wall, and so it has a working, full kitchen and bathroom and everything in there. And then we were living in there. We took about 4 months to build that. So we did a rental in town for about 4 months while we built that metal building, and then we moved into that metal building. And then from there we started, chipping away on the big house.
That's quite the process, man. Yeah. And with a newborn. Yeah, I remember before my wife and I bought our house, we were kind of in the same boat. Like, we were looking to build. We had a lot, and we had an architect, we had plans, we had engineering, we had everything. We were ready to pull the trigger and go. And that's when she got pregnant with our first kid. And we're like, I don't know if we want to really be building, while you're pregnant and then eventually having a kid. So
and were you going to do some of the work yourself?
Yeah, well, exactly. So very similar to y'all's situation. And for us, we were just like, I don't think we want to try to go through the stress of building a new home while being. And
it was pretty stressful. I mean,
guys for that. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, we broke ground when our firstborn was 6 months, and then I got pregnant again halfway 6 months later.
Wow.
And then we got moved in 14 months after the start, and that was 1 week before our second was born. So
That's incredible.
that was a lot. I don't
Yeah.
know if you want to talk about that, but it was a lot on our
Well,
family.
if
But
anything, it's motivation,
to get it
to get the
done.
buildings done.
I can imagine so. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Because we wanted to have this one finished and livable, before, because there's no way you're gonna have two kids in a 300 square foot.
That was just out of necessity,
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Brett, I understand you're a electrical engineer. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do. I work in the semiconductor industry, so I work with a lot of microelectronics. So my day job is, it falls under the category of, I think, electrical engineering. But
Okay.
yeah, so
Can
I do a lot of device engineering and that
okay.
sort of thing. So working on individual semiconductor devices and doing physics-based modeling and that sort of thing.
Makes no sense, but I believe you.
He's very
So,
mechanically minded, of
yeah,
course, as you could tell.
yeah, like it. So I mean, kind of walk me through your day, because yeah, that's certainly that's an industry that I know very little about. It sounds very interesting because I mean it's such a huge part of our lives,
Right.
but it's so clouded with mystery and just like the details, like you know what I mean. Like you
Yeah.
could probably talk about it all day, but I don't know if you
Yeah,
can give.
it's a pretty technical.
Yeah,
You know, I work in a portion of the company that deals with external customers that want to come and manufacture their chips at our company.
okay,
And I work in a team that looks at these sort of chips and the sort of technology nodes that they want to manufacture on. And I
yeah,
see if our process that our foundry offers lines up with their needs. And if the, individual devices, meaning like, transistors, capacitors, those sorts of things,
hmm,
uh, line up like the electrical specs that we have at our foundry, can that company essentially design the circuits they need with our PDK, is what it's called, process development kit.
okay,
Yeah, but what my day looked like, I'll say, was when we were building this house, that's the nice thing about living on our property.
yep,
I could work, I would wake up and work on the house, early in the morning, a few hours, go to work on my lunch break for an hour. I'd come over and do stuff and then go back to work. And then at night, I would come back up
yeah.
and I work on it more. So
So
I'll
you,
say that living on the property definitely, helped a lot.
oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, it sounds like but what you said, you really don't have a long commute. You can pop in and out. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Work on the house. Well,
Yeah.
that's cool. And you're right. It is very technical. I wish I knew more about it. I mean, I try to I want to learn more about the industry. It's very interesting to me. So what I want to get into though, so y'all are kind of going on this journey, and you're documenting the whole thing on social media. But let's go back to the beginning. Are y'all originally from Texas? Did y'all move here?
No, we are not from
Guess where?
Texas. We are part of the mass exodus from California.
Okay.
I know there's a stigma,
We
but
we lived in
That's
Northern
fun.
California.
Northern California, yeah.
Welcome. I'm glad y'all made it.
Yeah, yeah.
So really, what brought you here?
Well, a few things. We,
Freedom?
yeah, I would say a big part of our move was politically motivated.
Yeah.
We lived in a county in Northern California, and all this sort of stuff started going down. Well, we ended up moving during COVID or
Yeah.
Yeah,
shortly after.
2021.
Okay. All right.
Um, we just got tired of all the shenanigans, and um, it's kind of funny because as companies started going remote, letting remote and hybridized roles, a lot of the people that worked in the Bay Area, which
Hmm.
is like the Silicon Valley in
Yeah,
California, were moving up into the foothill areas because those were like very nice areas that weren't trashed yet. And a lot of the people um, in the foothill areas were kind of
You know,
wanting to move somewhere else because
moving to Texas, Tennessee,
yeah. And so
Florida. Yeah.
yeah,
that was one thing. Another thing was fires.
Oh
The
yeah.
Caldor fire burned right up to our property line, which is one of California's largest fires.
that's scary. I mean, that touches on what's going on right now, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's very scary. Yeah,
Yeah, so that happened. Our fire insurance was really high. Every year we were like, is our house going to burn down? Because we were up in the mountains on 10 acres, heavily wooded area. And and then we also thought about just we wanted to raise kids,
yeah,
and that sort of thing. And where we were living then was like beautiful, up in the mountains, but it just wasn't really conducive to having a family and raising kids and being like part of at least like some sort of community. So
yeah.
for all those reasons, we ended up sort of looking around at different states, and we ended up visiting some friends that lived in Fredericksburg, and we kind of just were out here visiting them, and kind of just on a whim. The last day we were visiting them, we looked at some land and we ended up just buying it. So yeah,
Fredericksburg, beautiful.
yeah,
That's
it's a really nice area.
that's up by Enchanted Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were just up there. It was right after Christmas. Yeah, we went to Llano. And stayed. We got an Airbnb out there, and I know Llano's pretty close to Fredericksburg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were right. We could see Enchanted Rock from where we were,
Wow.
and that's Enchanted Rock's where I proposed to my wife. Right on.
Oh.
Okay. Nice.
I made her stop, and I was like, "All right, do this."
Yeah.
No, but beautiful, beautiful area. I love Fredericksburg. That whole area. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see why you fell in love with it for sure. Well, that's interesting, because you always just kind of hear on the news, stories and things that are going on in that area, but you don't know how much of it is just nonsense or just blowing things out of proportion
Right.
with all the shutdowns and
Mm-hmm.
telling people they can't work and you gotta vaccinate and all this other
Oh,
nonsense.
yes.
That was all real.
Mm-hmm.
It was all real for sure. Yeah, it happened. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad y'all made it here, honestly. I'm happy for you guys. And I'm sure y'all are much happier as well. I mean,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So okay. So you come from California, you want to build a house, but what's going through your minds at the time, before you really get going on it? How did you land on a solid limestone house?
Well, I'll say we built a chicken coop during COVID,
Okay.
and I think it cost me $5,000 in like just all the materials, and that was
Okay.
wood. And so that was back when OSB was like $45 a sheet. At least
Oh,
where we were.
and lumber prices just skyrocketed.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm starting to
So
picture now. I see why. Yeah.
yeah, so in my mind, I was just thinking like alternatives, like what can we build that's alternative to wood? Because at that time wood was so expensive.
Yeah.
And when we had come down to visit our friends that lived in Fredericksburg the first time before we had even purchased land here,
Okay.
we were in Bernie, and we were walking through town, and there was a park, and it had these very large limestone blocks. The butter sticks is what they call them, butter stick limestone blocks.
Yeah.
Those are the 5 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot or by 20-inch blocks.
Yep.
And back where we come from,
There's none
there's
of that.
nothing. There's none of that. There's no limestone. Everything where we came from was granite. So that was like you don't see that ever in California, at least where we were. And I
Yeah.
saw those blocks, and I was like, well, that's actually pretty cool. Like, what would it take to stack those things? And I
Hmm.
started doing research, and not too many. I was kind of surprised, like, why haven't people been making homes out of these?
Yeah.
I know, like, a lot of the original German settlers in this area were building limestone houses, but a lot of times those were just smaller quarried blocks, not these like monolithic
Right.
blocks. And that's kind of what sparked the idea in my mind. And I told Naomi, I said, well, let's think about, like, what if we were to stack these? And, we kind of went on and off the idea because it's going to be our first time building a house. And also, it's like this building method that's not really used. At least, like, we couldn't find
Yeah.
many people that have done it. So I know you've had Daniel on your podcast. I think he's Daniel Hall. He's probably, I
Yeah.
think, one or maybe there's one or two other guys that are actually stacking homes out of this stuff in hill
Yeah.
country.
There's not a lot.
Yeah, I was like kind of surprised, and so I had the idea, and then I started doing some research, and I found Daniel Hall, who was a good. I
Yeah.
actually he was doing exactly what I wanted to do. So that's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
how we landed on the stone idea, and we kind of played with it for a while, um, and then I guess we just decided to do it. It was either going to be that or an A-frame, and we're
Yeah.
like, because back where we're from, like A-frames were kind of like in style, and
Uh,
um, it just wouldn't vibe out here. I don't think
well,
so.
so what did you think? When Brett proposed this idea of using large limestone blocks, I mean, did you buy it right away, or you're like,
No, no, yeah, I didn't buy it right away. I was more like, let's just get a house, not make it harder on us. Because not only do we, well, first it was like, okay, we're gonna have someone build our house. It's like, okay,
yeah,
I don't think that's gonna work, so I guess we're doing it on our own. And then not only are we gonna do it on our own, we're gonna do this style that hardly anyone has ever done. So to
yeah,
me, it sounds stressful.
uh,
But he stuck with it, and I was like, okay, well, I actually do want the stone. I just know it's going to take a lot of work.
yeah,
And I kind of just had to commit to it in my mind and be like, okay, we're doing this, and we just
Yeah,
got to make it work. It's like we did enough research to know it's feasible. It's just like not obviously having done it before.
yeah,
It's a little monumental, like it's very, what's the word?
well,
Overwhelming.
I think the trick, I mean, for
Yeah.
me, the trick has always been like, I don't overthink things. Like, at the end of the day, it's basically just like Legos on a big scale. Like,
Yeah.
if you can like know what size Lego pieces you need, and it's actually not hard, you know,
yeah,
idea. It's not like it's hard to do it in an idea, but I think maybe there are just a little bit more like some challenges with execution. But at the end of the
yeah,
day,
yeah.
like, I guess for the way I thought about this thing, it's like I never thought about it too hard. I'm like, well, let's just do it, and we'll just work through it as things come.
Right. Kind of
And
figured.
it turned out great, and we didn't have any major hiccups.
That's
Maybe we
great.
can talk later about all the shenanigans that you have to deal with when you can't put anything on the walls, but that sort of thing.
Pros and cons with everything. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but it 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 turned out great, and we're happy we did it. So
yeah, yeah. It's funny. You know, you say in your Instagram a lot that neither of you have a building background. So I found that to be interesting. That, and Naomi, you kind of alluded to that. That you're kind of diving into this. It's not a practice that's very common these days, and you're both newbies, so it was really kind of uncharted territory for the both of you. So, what were some, when you reflect back, what were some lessons that you learned that maybe you wish you had known at the time before you launched into this project?
what's your answer?
Like,
Things that you learn, things that I can go back. I mean, there are definitely certain things I'll go back and do differently, that's for sure. Um,
Yeah,
I Yeah, as you say, like I didn't come from a building background,
Not building
not
houses.
building houses. I did a lot
Understood.
of carpentry. I build furniture and that sort of thing, but I've never built a house. But I'm able to think about, how things go together.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, along the way, like things that we would have done differently. You know, the only thing as I could think of are honestly for me, like one of the trickier parts about building a stone house, and something that like I had a hard time picturing until we were actually doing it was like, how do you put the roof on a stone house?
Yeah.
um, the top plate and all these sorts of things, like
Yeah.
because you can try quite a bit to get the level, the stones level on the top, right? So the way we did it is we stacked 5 blocks high, it's 10 feet,
Yeah.
each block is 2 foot high. And you can level the stones as much as you can. And like they were actually we got them pretty level. But things that you think about in a normal that you don't think about in a normal house, um, like your roof, things that fit like here's a good example. Like in a bedroom, right?
Yeah.
When your top plate, like when your joists are sitting on top of the top plate, but that top plate is sitting on top of stones, and your top plate is say like a 2x6
Yep.
or something, and it's an inch and a half, right? Yeah,
Yep.
and your joists are sitting on top of that. Now you have a gap between the bottom of your joist and your stone.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's all these things that were like, okay, do we notch the joist? Do we like so that none of that stuff would happen when you're just framing like a stick frame house where you could just sheetrock right up to the joist and your corners would meet perfectly, you
Yep.
know.
Yep.
Um, the way
That's
we
a
did our house would, we had in our great room, we have a vaulted ceiling that's timber framed. We use like these 4x8 Douglas fir beams. And the and then in the rooms we just have normal ceilings that we framed with 2x8s. But the level of the top plate changed
yeah.
from the great room to the bedrooms. And so all that stuff, I had a hard time envisioning it until we were actually just doing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I still don't know if I would have done the ceilings differently, but your options are that was the main thing that came up on my I was scratching my head a lot about, which was, do I notch like the joists and so the ceiling is sitting level with the top of the rock, if you can
Uh-huh.
imagine that. Or
Yeah.
do I frame them right on top of the top plate, which then has an inch and a half gap? So it's like if you have an inch and a half gap, you have to fill that gap with something
Uh-huh.
because you don't want to have an inch and a half gap between the ceiling and the top of your stone in all the bedrooms.
Yeah.
But if you notch your joists and so it's sitting flat, so you say you sheetrock, or in our case we put beadboard on our ceilings, that
Uh-huh.
runs right up to the stone, but then you have the whole part of now you have to scribe everything against the stone because you're trying to put dimensional lumber up against something that's,
Yes.
rough.
But
So
great
it's
up.
like either way, you're kind of like having to mess around a lot more than you would have
Yeah.
to do with a stick frame house.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I can see that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's, little things like that. I don't know if I would have done them differently per se, but we had to definitely kind of invent our way, I guess, as we were doing it.
I've I've kind of gathered that. Yeah, just looking through y'all's Instagram and just looking at pictures, it's very it seems to me like the the function drives the form, So I saw that a lot, with your as you're stacking the blocks. How do you run electrical, right? So you ran electrical on the inside of the wall. Well, now how do you hide that? Well,
Right.
let's add some baseboard, right? The
Yeah.
baseboard's going to hide this. So the function of bringing electrical into that wall now drives the need to apply a baseboard or some kind of millwork detail to conceal it.
Right.
And I thought it was cool the copper fittings on the shower head and the shower,
Oh, yeah.
the
Yeah,
the
that was kind of a running theme, like because talking about electrical, you could run it two ways, right? They actually kind of make like basically what looks like a miter, not a miter saw, sorry, like a dado. Think of like a dado blade on a table saw, but it's
Yep.
like a dado stone saw, and you can cut like a 1 inch or more groove into stone. So like
Yeah.
I know I've seen electricians basically dado like cut a big channel in the stone, and then they'll put their conduit or their, whatever however they're running their electrical, and they'll pack it. That's one way. The other way is doing what we did, which was doing like an exposed copper conduit. So
Yeah.
we have baseboards that everywhere on the wall where we have like a receptacle or that sort of thing, we have baseboards that stick off the wall about, an inch and a half or so. And that conduit comes behind it. And then when it runs up the wall, we put copper and it goes. And then I built oak boxes that
Yep.
conceal the electrical junction box. And then we just mounted it right on the face of the stone.
Gotcha.
So
These are kind of things that electricians would
that's
not
what I
want
was
to
also
do
thinking. It's like,
either.
if I wasn't doing this myself, who am I going to get to?
Get to do this.
It's like
Yeah.
Oh,
half electrician,
that
half
work
handyman. Like,
skyrocket too, is all those,
Yeah.
unplanned little details. And
right,
yeah, like then you got to get a carpenter or an electrician.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That makes costs go up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And
a
so,
lot of custom work. And
and I like y'all's finishes too. I mean, y'all picked a lot of really antique furniture. I know, you said you were a carpenter, so I'm sure, I don't know if you built some of your own pieces. I know you restored a lot of old antique furniture,
mm,
and it really just goes with the architecture of the house. Like this feels like
yeah,
some kind of colonial, um, y- you know,
Hmm.
house that was built back in the 1800s. Just the
right.
the warmth and feel of it. It's awesome. I mean, I really compliment you guys on the style and the
That was
execution of
our favorite part was picking finishes, of course,
Yeah.
and once we started going on, well, we've always loved perusing antique stores and getting little antiques, you
it. Yeah.
know, furniture. But once we started picking, I think it started with these antique sconces that came out of I think it's the governor's mansion in Ohio. Someone
Wow.
was reselling them because they were doing a renovation. And I said, why don't we just try to pick all of our lights to be
Yeah.
antique? And then it became the lights, and then it became
Well, like we're
switch
kind of
plates.
obsessed.
Yeah,
We're definitely
a little
a
obsessed.
little obsessed with lighting.
Yeah.
Um, Lighting, I think, is very important. And it's funny, like you'll see these beautiful houses and then they'll just put in like can lights or something. Um, of course, can lights work in some houses, but it's like if you're gonna have everything else be very custom, I think just a lot of times like lighting is overlooked. So that might just be, the way I see it. But the what we chose to do is we chose all antique lights. So all the lights in our house are from probably 40s and before.
Hmm.
Um, we don't have any ceiling lights in terms of like we don't have any can lights. We don't have any lights on like ceiling fans or anything like that. We tried to keep it how a house would have been made. So we have sconces on everywhere in the house. All the bedrooms have sconces, all the great room has sconces.
Hmm.
And then the great room does have these like hanging pendant lights that were taken. They're actually they call them like schoolhouse style. If you just look up schoolhouse style lights, these ones actually came from a schoolhouse
In
from
Canada?
the 30s, yeah, from
Yeah.
Canada. So we got a
Wow.
set of those. So like every light fixture in the house is a little different. We have some from Italy, we have some from France, we have some from Canada, Ohio, Governor's Mansion. We chose a lot of uh, Art Deco.
Yeah.
Art Deco is one of my favorite
I love it.
eras. I mean, it's the lights that we got from the governor's mansion were the first lights we got, which were the Art Deco skyscraper, lights. Have you seen this before? And that kind of set us off on this like kind of trying to find at least like Art Deco or like Art Nouveau style pendant lighting and that sort of thing.
For sure.
And then we kind of branched out from there. And
yeah,
the room I'm sitting in now, which is my study, has Italian sconces from the 1800s. So kind of like different periods, I guess. I try to keep them together in the house. But
But also still, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to get into real quick the sort of the performance of the house. There are some challenges, I think, with building with stone, and I think I talked to, when Daniel was on, we kind of talked about some of the building science aspects of solid limestone, and he had mentioned that that typically on a house like that, there's no waterproofing on the exterior or interior of the wall. It's just because solid limestone, and moisture or vapor will eventually propagate through the stone, into the interior of the house. It might take some time, but certainly in this hot, humid climate, that humidity will eventually make its way indoors. So, kind of walk me through, how does the house feel, in the summer versus, now we're in the winter. How does the house feel? I mean, how does it perform?
Yeah. This is a question we get a lot. And I was meaning to do a video on YouTube. We've slowed down on our YouTube videos just because we had a baby recently, but this question gets asked a lot, and there's not a lot of people that give a good answer.
Yeah.
I don't know if my answer will be good, but I can talk about summer and winter. So like in the summer, you're right. I think there is eventually, like in very humid, when it's very humid, like in July, August.
Yeah.
I think probably some of that humidity or moisture might come through the walls, not through the stone per se, but the mortar, the lime mortar that's used is very porous. And potentially that could, permit some of the humidity to come through. We, being in the house in the summer, I was working in here all summer, and there's not really any, you don't really notice it if it was a higher humidity. And partially that could just be because, we have our central heating and air is a heat pump.
Okay.
And that removes quite a bit of humidity, So
do you have a separate dehumidifier?
No, we don't have a separate dehumidifier. No. And I think the humidity level in our house remains around, in the summer, I think it was around 60% or so, 50 to 60%. Which isn't super humid, but it's also not dry, But it's not like you walk in, if you're outside in the summer, walk in our house, it feels like crisp, cool air.
Yeah.
It's not like muggy or anything.
Yeah. Especially August. We moved in August. It was really hot.
So usually, I mean, that's a little higher than average. I would say most of the time, on a well conditioned stick frame, if it's sealed up really well, you're probably sitting at 45 to 50%, maybe on average. So 60 is, above average. But I would say that the feel of the house, you walk in, it's still cool during the summer.
Yeah.
I don't know what the R value is of limestone, but I don't think it's very high, but you still have all that mass that it takes a while for the sun to really heat up that stone. And then of course, at night when it cools down, now that stone is radiating that heat inwards. I mean, is that what you experienced?
Yeah. If you want to know what the R value of our walls is, it's about 2. 2.19 or something. I calculated it once. So R value is kind of a meaningless metric in terms of stone. Like you can assign an R value to stone, but it does not have thermal resistance, The thing that makes the walls work is the thermal mass. And so for the summer, this sort of house works great, I think, in this climate because let's say it gets to 90 degrees during the day and it gets to 60 degrees at night, and you're keeping your house at, 72 or 75 or something. That's really good because as long as we try to keep the interior temperature of our house in the middle, roughly, of those two temperature swings, then provided that you have enough thermal mass in the walls, that heat transfer never makes it through your wall. So like the exterior of your walls are heating up outside during the day, and I don't know how far it permeates into the wall, but then the sun goes down and the heat flow changes directions. So like optimally, that heat flow direction change is always happening within your wall, and it never comes all the way through. Now in the winter, it's different. So we get a lot of people asking about like how does it perform in the winter. There's a lot of people that talk about living in stone houses that are in Europe or something like that. And I'll say that if you are interested in like having a super efficient home in the winter, like stone is not the way to go.
Well, luckily you're in Texas and it's cold, a few months. It's not a brutal winter for sure. So
our decision to build with stone was definitely more stylistic because of all the stone houses in the hill country. But like I think the reason why they started building with limestone here was because that was the material that was abundant.
Yeah.
It doesn't it's not because it's like to necessarily a good material or as good of a material as say a stick frame in the winter. So for us, like it's probably been, we've had most days are like in the high 40s now, right?
Sure.
And we've gotten down into the 20s and stuff. So in that circumstance, like when we're trying to keep our house at 68, the heat flow is always one direction. It's always out. Right. So that's in the wintertime, it gets a little bit more challenging, to keep that. And from my experience, like as long as you keep the house warm, we have central heating and air. We have we have a wood burning stove, and then we also have radiant floors.
I was going to ask if you opted for the radiant floors because it seems like that would be really beneficial in a stone house.
Yeah, we did the radiant floors, and with those three things, like.
Hey everyone, I hope you are enjoying the episode. Tan Timber Thermowood is now available through U.S. lumber brokers. Made from sustainably sourced timber, Tan Timber Thermowood offers superior stability and longevity for your decking, soffit, and siding needs. If you want to experience the benefits of thermally modified timber on your next project, give U.S. lumber brokers a call at 512-927-1111. Email to sales@uslumberbrokers.com or visit their website to get started today.
Like it hasn't been an issue. We've kept warm in our house. Yeah. But I can say that it's probably not as efficient as a stick frame. It's more of in that aspect in the wintertime, it's probably more of a form over function.
It's definitely an aesthetic choice. And like I said, I mean, I don't think that a perfect building method exists. I mean, honestly, there's pros and cons to everything. I've realized that, and as a carpenter, I mean, wood is really kind of a terrible building material, to build your house out of. It moves, it shrinks, it expands, it rots, bugs like it. And there's certain things that you can do to mitigate all that. But it's like, and I get that it's a readily available resource. It's relatively cheap. I mean, not so much anymore, but always a cheaper building material, and it's strong, but it just doesn't last, especially when you look at production homes and maybe some really kind of lower end custom homes that they don't quite get the air sealing and waterproofing right. You're just causing more problems. You know, if
Yeah.
filled up properly,
Yeah.
it's not waterproofed. It's waterproofed enough to where when water gets in, it becomes a really big issue.
Yeah.
And so homes just, in my opinion, and unless you really use some high dollar systems and they're executed very well,
Mhm.
like waterproofing, then it's probably not going to last very long. And stone,
Right.
one of those materials that's like, you know what? If it gets wet, it's all right.
Yeah.
If the humidity's a
Yeah.
little high, who cares? It's fine. If a bomb goes off, you know what? We're covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
And we're the kind of family that's like outside all the time. We're on the porch all the time I mean, even today or this week when it's comfortable, we have our little one, out there. So it's not like
yeah,
we're inside all the time or people who are like very sensitive to,
Yeah.
I guess if you
Well,
need that to be, really temperature controlled, I understand that. But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I want to talk about the wood. Growing up, my dad was a carpenter. He was a really, really good carpenter. He was like a perfectionist. He built our houses and they're like beautiful.
yeah.
And he would always tell me, like, if you're gonna, do something, you gotta do it right the first time. And then he's like always been baked into my head. And also, like, if you're gonna do something, you want to just do it once, right?
Yeah.
Um, I guess like I've always just thought that, and I've kind of like maybe taken it. I wouldn't say I'm taking it to the extreme, but for me, like if I'm gonna build a house, so here's the thing. If I was gonna build something and I know in 75, 70 years it's like gonna be like this rotting, decrepit thing, it makes me not even want to build it in the first place. That's
Right.
just how I feel, right?
Right.
And so it's like stone is sort of like it's a very permanent thing. I know that even if maybe my roof eventually disappears, a
Yeah.
couple
Yeah.
of thousand years from now, this stone shell might still be sitting here. Uh,
Exactly. You
and like,
the part, all
yeah,
these ancient Greek and Roman buildings, like they're still standing today. Like
Yeah,
what
it's
right,
incredible.
solid stone. You know,
yeah,
it makes sense. Like it will outlast humanity. Um, yeah,
Mhm.
I think there's, you know, that's a good point. It is very durable.
yeah. And like going to all these finishes, one of the reasons why we chose all these finishes is because a lot of times things that were made back then are much higher quality than they are today.
Yeah.
And like this whole thing about like high quality materials is also one of the reasons why I chose stone, because I'll give you a good example of this. I have doors from the 1800s that were pine that I
Yeah.
was cutting.
Oh, they're all of our exterior doors.
Well, no, all these doors I think are
Oh, and some of the
our interior
interior.
doors are pine. They're old, like Victorian panel doors.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was cutting them, and I don't know if you ever cut pine from the 1800s, but it's like a different wood. It
It's much.
smells different. It
Yeah.
cuts different. It's denser. You have it's like it's not a hardwood, obviously, but
Right.
the wood that they used to build with was so much higher quality than what we have now, just because well, they were probably using all old growth wood. But
Yes.
like part of the reason that I chose one of the reasons I chose stone was because I wanted it bothers me the wood quality today bothers me.
Yeah.
I guess that's what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
Yeah. Tell me.
I know there's no way around it. Like all the wood we have probably just comes from, at tree farms, and I mean, you can count the growth rings,
Yeah.
like 2x4s from Home Depot or something. And
Yeah.
so, it's the whole thing about like building with a high quality, long lasting material, is also one of the reasons why we chose stone, because it's just I mean, I can imagine that all these homes that they're throwing up, these sort of like tract homes or spec homes or something, like we can look today back on like old Victorian homes that are still standing, and I don't think any of these homes are gonna, I mean, some of them will be standing, but I think a lot of them won't be standing.
Yeah.
Just because the quality of materials has gone down so much. So I tried to
Even to your point, I mean, old homes that were built out of timber, or dimensional lumber, that because they did use a lot of that old growth wood, that old growth lumber, you know, there was no concrete foundation. They just did pier and beam, directly,
right.
ground stacked. Homes last 100 years. The wood doesn't
Mhm.
rot, very durable. Um,
Right.
not a very comfortable home to live in. Because very leaky and drafty, but from a
Yeah.
performance point, it allowed everything to dry out. So it
Mhm.
just,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I mean, definitely technology changes. Housing needs change, population growth is really, I think, what's driving a lot of the industry and the shortage of housing and the need to produce more and more homes quicker.
Mhm.
Yeah, it just drives down the quality.
Mhm. Yeah.
Man,
So those reasons amongst others are basically why we chose to, do what we
yeah,
did. And I think I would do it again. I would change some things,
yeah, yeah,
but I don't think I'll change too many things.
yeah. I think what you
Yeah.
got is great. Honestly, I can't compliment you enough. I think y'all have done a tremendous job. I know y'all. I'm sure y'all have learned a lot. Um, will you be doing it again? That's another question. Is there a round two? Is there another
You
structure?
know, we have the building bug and not because we're like taking a break right now,
Yeah, yeah,
We we're already dreaming up like what can we do for an addition.
Yeah.
But we're also like, let's like take a few years and have our kids.
Yeah.
At least just a little
yeah.
bit. But I do want to use stone again. I'm not sure if I would use like quite the dimensions of like the 5 footers, maybe like smaller stones because I really like the cottage kind of look, but probably the same thickness. I don't know.
Yeah. I think, in the future, um, it's funny, like it's like I feel like I've done it now. Like, okay, I feel like I built a stone house, and I don't know if our addition will be stone or
Uh,
not. Like
Interesting.
maybe it will be stone. Um, I would like to build another stone house. I think I would do things, for example, I would change the style a little bit. Like I would use more of, I would use the butter stick blocks to have more of a cut face. Our
Right.
blocks are very rough.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's kind of cool to have like this like right now I'm staring at the corner of my study and I have like this really rough, uneven stone, and then butted up right against it is like this wainscoting and wallpaper. So it's like this
yeah,
juxtaposition of like something very ordered and trimmed out and like this very rough
yeah,
wall.
yeah.
And it's like a cool thing, but I think I would maybe do something that's more like a cut face and
Yeah,
thinner, more neat grout lines and that sort of thing.
I gotcha.
But I don't know. I mean, I might do that. I'm also playing with the idea of like just doing like a full on like some sort of like Victorian edition.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen like my pictures. I really like doing trim work, like all the corbels and all the gingerbread stuff. I really enjoy doing that.
That's cool.
If I
I,
did a Victorian style home, I could just kind of go crazy.
I have seen some of the pictures. Yeah. Um, and which that kind of leads me into my next question, which is Naomi, I assume you run the Instagram.
Yep.
Uh, what was the thought behind documenting this whole process? Why put
Yeah.
it for everybody?
Yeah, I thought it'd be fun to just have an Instagram page for it to update our friends and family because we told people we're going to be building a stone house and they said okay, send us updates, and it's like I'm not going to update everyone through a
Yeah,
text message or through text messages, so I'm like, let's just do this will be easy to share. So it kind of started like that, and then I noticed that like not many people had done this, So I knew it was a unique idea. And I thought to myself, maybe this could be an inspiration for other people
Well, not many people have done this in the
Texas
past 100 years.
in the past 100 years.
Yeah.
Let's
You
be
go far
clear.
enough back and yeah.
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 In the past 100 years. And, no one alive has probably done this.
Not very many. Yes.
Yeah, not very many. Unless you're in the UK. I get so many opinions online, there's just so many people who've done it and not done it and have.
Did you get a lot of comments from people like, "Oh, that's a terrible choice. Like, why would you do that?"
Oh yeah. And then you have people in the UK who are like, "Oh yeah, we do this every day,"
That's true.
So,
Yeah. Germany, a lot of Europeans. It's not limestone, but they do build a lot of structures out of masonry material. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So but
and I will say that another reason why we decided to document it and kind of put it out there is because we thought possibly about it might turn into some sort of business opportunity.
Okay.
In terms of like maybe we want to build stone houses,
So you start your own construction company is what you're saying.
We were thinking that, yeah, or just like leaving the door open for it, and like honestly, I can't say that I've decided for or against that idea.
Yeah.
I do know like now that I've done it once, I can probably do it better. And like I know what to do now. Like I would have no problem doing it. I know I could do it for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
We just haven't it's a complete jump from what I'm doing right now. But that's another reason why we did that is we wanted to have this sort of build a following and kind of put it out there and like build up this thing to where possibly.
Well, and I didn't know it was going to be a following like we have now. I thought maybe it'll catch on. Some people in Texas would be interested, like locally.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of funny because people are like, not half the people, but a lot of people are like, this is ridiculous. And then but most of the people are like, wow, this is great. This is amazing. Like, how do we do this? And I kind of wanted to be like a resource, at least for kind of like how we did it as people who've never done it before.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the most common questions that you get?
Performance, like we were talking about.
That's the main one. We get that one a lot.
How do we run electrical? How do we run plumbing?
I figured cost would be up there, like top questions, like how much does it cost?
Cost.
Yeah. So, well, back during COVID times, it would have been cheaper than a stick frame, probably.
Yeah.
Now that we did it, and the prices of lumber have come down, it's more than a stick frame, but it's not like astronomically more.
Right.
You save on a lot of things, especially if you do like we did, where you don't have any interior. We didn't frame out against the interior stone walls. Like we just left it rock, so we don't have insulation costs, right? We don't have the sheetrock or framing or painting on all those exterior walls.
Yeah, and the whole thing, we did it for $250 a square foot. Of course, that's us being our own GCs,
right?
Forcing everything. Yeah. I think Daniel, when you had him on it, he, hiring someone to do it for you for a custom home is going to be $350 to $400
at the minimum.
And
at the minimum,
yeah. So we did it probably on the lower, a good.
We saved a lot of money doing it ourselves.
Doing it custom ourselves. I
guess. That's $250 that's really good. I mean, for what you're getting, what's
not including the land, but yeah.
What's the square footage, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah,
well, it's kind of funny, if they measure the outside of the building versus the inside, it's different, right? Because our walls, we lose 3 feet on the walls.
Space. What's the square footage?
Interior space is I think it's 1576, right?
Yeah.
1576.
So I mean, if you do the math, and we built our house for about 400, right?
No, I can't remember.
I don't know. What's the math?
You can figure it out.
Times 1600, I think it's around 400.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
It's not too bad.
I guess it's not too bad for us, but
that's good because I mean, honestly, for what y'all built, the style, the materials, the aesthetic that you've chosen. Yeah, I mean, 250 is a steal. I mean, if you tried to build, I think what y'all built today, with all the same finishes and hiring all of it out, yeah, I mean that's easily twice that.
Double maybe.
So
Yeah.
easily,
Yeah.
probably more, probably triple.
Yeah.
So I think I think y'all made the right move. I mean, especially at the time that y'all were building in, with lumber being what it was, definitely all for sure. Well, so talk about there's been some opportunities, I guess, for you to help people out who who do want to build their own limestone home, and y'all provide a is it a checklist or a kind of a packet on information on like how to get started? Can you walk me through what you've developed?
Yeah, it's on our Instagram on my link. It's just the first 5 steps. So I tried to formulate and try to make this applicable as much as I can to like anybody.
Yeah.
It's just kind of getting your wheels turning on, okay, what do I need to have, at least around me or available in order to make a limestone home or even a stone home happen. And in those 5 steps, it's like, check your regulations if you're under any. I don't know if people live in an HOA or if they're in the city. I think I've seen these stone houses being built like in a suburb though, too.
Sure.
So it's possible, you want to get a crane, you need a crane, you need stone, you need to be able to have it delivered to you. I mean, someone asked me, like, do you think those stones would go over this really rickety bridge on the way to my property? I was like, I don't know. So yeah, they just, thinking about like, is this the right thing for me? And I listed out a couple other things. But those are like the kind of the two major, like, is it allowed on your land, wherever you live, and like the stones and the crane, and also if the stones are affordable in your area. I know that they were for us here in Texas, and I mean
Right.
these butter stick stones are kind of everywhere, right? Like parking lots and playscapes and I don't know, retaining walls. So they're affordable for
It also contains like our budget.
Now, no, that's our other thing.
Oh, I thought you were talking about that.
No, the 5 first steps is the just like our free resource.
Okay.
The other thing we offer is a budgeting and sourcing toolkit.
Okay.
Yeah, budgeting.
You can tell she's the author of all these things. I just do the work.
Yeah. So the other thing we offer is our budgeting and sourcing toolkit, which it has some tips on sourcing and budgeting, but mostly it has like our GCs that we actually used, or sorry, our subs that we actually used. And, they didn't have any hesitation working with stone. And kind of like a line item budget, it kind of just gives people, a starting point. Everyone's house is going to be a little different. So it's just to get their wheels turning with that free resource. And then with the other one, it's to get them get started on some kind of plan or start somewhere, because I just feel like the idea was overwhelming to me. So I feel like if it's overwhelming to other people, maybe we can give them somewhere to start. So
that's true. I think the maybe getting started is probably the hardest part. Like, how do you get the ball rolling? Like you can visualize it in your head. Like, okay, I can see this happening, but it's like, how do you take that first step? And I'm sure that scares a lot of people away. Like, oh, building your own house, like that seems really complicated. I don't know what I'm doing. It's scary. I don't want to do it. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
for us to get started, like the big thing was
started. How do you get going? So
yeah.
Go ahead, Brett. Sorry.
Yeah, it was, I couldn't hear you talking for a minute. For me, like the thing that got me, the big thing was like, how do I talk to a quarry? Like,
yeah.
How do I get to those guys that are like cutting the blocks out? Because I drew up all my plans and I was like, I need 30 of this size. I need 40 of this size. Like, how do I get this to that guy? And how do I get that guy to cut him out of the mountain? That was a big thing. Like, to find, a lot of quarries will not, they have a middleman. You have to find who that middleman is.
Right.
And once I found the middleman, then they coordinate with the shipping cup or with the trucks and everything to come out and deliver them. But like for me, just getting started, like for getting the stones, it was like I was just calling quarries.
Yeah.
Or like landscaping.
Yeah, I remember I called Rockscapes in Kerrville and I was like, where do you guys get your rocks?
Yeah.
Like, and I was kind of talking to the guy, I was like, hey, like, can I get his like number? Just to ask him if you, that sort of thing.
You feel like you're just cold calling because you're like, you make a list of questions for yourself and you're okay, I guess I'll try to call this person and get some information. So that's how a lot of, the planning went.
Yeah. And
you just keep going.
And I'll say, like, we haven't mentioned this during the podcast, but I want to give a shout out. So, like, we did a lot of the work ourselves. We had some subs. One of our subs was Daniel Hall, who was on your podcast. So Daniel, we hired Daniel to stack. So like I drew up all the plans, I got all the rocks here, but Daniel helped me kind of figure all that stuff out. Like because I was like, Daniel, like, what do you need here to get stacking, right? Like, and he said, like, he told me like another guy I can talk to, and so like Daniel was very, very helpful as well. Like, I think it would have taken me longer and more cold calling essentially if I didn't have Daniel.
Yeah.
So he was a good guy, good resource, and we were happy with him. So,
did you find throughout this process that overall like people were willing to help you, or did you get a lot of like, why are you calling? Don't call this number again. Or
in general, yeah, I feel like people were like, well, they're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, they're like, you want to build a retaining wall? I'm like, no, kind of.
The only person who would stack the stones was basically Daniel. Everyone else didn't really want to have anything to do with it or have the liability.
Right. Yeah. I talked to quite a few guys that stacked retaining walls and they're like, I don't know, man. Like, because he's like, I don't, when you're doing a retaining wall, it's backfilled and they can stagger the stones a little bit, right? Back. And since none of them had done it before, they were like, one guy was like, I'm not going to do it if you don't get engineering on it.
Right. Yeah.
And another guy's like, I'm not going to do it unless we literally drive. When you make your slab, I want you to put in like 10-foot or 12-foot or more like rebar. And he wanted to like drill holes through all the stones and like lower all the blocks like onto the rebar, which was going to be an absolute nightmare. I can tell you that. So like every guy I talked to, I was just like, man, like, I don't know. And then he's like, I've done it before. He's done quite a few homes now, I think.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, pretty comfortable, with Daniel. He's done it before.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of guys didn't want to touch it, Or another thing is cranes. Like, some guys like, yeah, I have a skid steer or something, but I can only stack it 3 or 4 blocks tall. For that top block, you're going to have to get some sort of crane. And then you start looking into crane rentals and
you're like,
it's expensive to get a crane rental.
Am I going to operate this crane? Who's going to operate this crane?
Yeah. So all those things all kind of culminated into having Daniel build the wall, and it worked out. It worked out good.
That's true. He's definitely a good resource to have, for something like that. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's something you don't think about as the tools and machinery necessary. Stick frame, you don't necessarily have that. You can just hand 2x6s up and down a ladder, and done. And but with those blocks, it's a different beast. Well, Naomi, I think you're kind of the unsung hero maybe in all this. I mean, you're you're mama bear. You're doing this. I know Brett is doing a lot of the
a lot of the physical work and, providing an income as well, and doing this in his spare time, what little he has. But but you're also raising a family, and that's not easy, especially going through construction, which is in and of itself very stressful. So I want to commit that like that's not an easy job to have, is being being mama while this is going on, and trying to keep a level head, and
Yeah, it definitely tested us, like, not that we had any major fallouts, but it definitely
She just told me the other day, she's
another, it's another level to our marriage.
Well, she said if a couple can survive building a custom house, then they probably will survive marriage.
Yeah, I truth to that. It's not easy. It's
no, yeah, like, and then having him gone all day, being pregnant, chasing a toddler, and having life still run, and then also just being like, okay, just a couple more months of this.
Yeah. Well, and she did all the budgeting. I mean, yeah, it wouldn't have happened without her, because like I had no idea about money stuff.
He just asked me, like, can we buy this?
Yeah, so she kept track of all the budgeting and everything. It's a lot of work. All the bank draws, like all this stuff. She was in charge of all that.
My last job was administrative, so I like doing that. But
but what is your background? What did you do before coming to Texas?
So yeah, it's very different from what I guess do now. But I worked for a nonprofit that helped to keep the freedom to privately homeschool in California, like keep it.
Wow, that's cool.
Working for a nonprofit was super fun. I loved the mission. And it was kind of like a really small, nonprofit. So you get to wear many hats and do a lot of exciting things. And we would go to the Capitol and such and talk to legislators. So I don't know, that job gave me a lot of confidence too, just be like, hey, we can do whatever we want to do,
Yeah.
We can get this done. We can build this house. And I mean,
how old are the kids now?
Oh gosh, we just have one that just turned 2 and one that's 4 months.
2 and 4 months.
Yeah, one that's 2 years old and one that's 4 months old. So,
are you thinking about schooling? Is that what you're gonna do?
I was homeschooled, and before it was cool, and now everyone's homeschooled. But I'm pretty sure, that's the way. I think that God's leading us, and trying to just have our little abode here, for our family.
Yeah.
And part of that is just building the house we like,
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's great. I mean, we're kind of on the same, we kind of do a hybrid, homeschool and then they have a school that they go to, but it's like 3 days on, 2 days off kind of a deal.
Nice. How old are yours?
They're 6 and 4.
Nice. Okay.
They're a handful. But and they love it. I mean, we love the school that they're in, and we also love that it's very involved. The parents are very involved. I mean, you have to be, because you're doing many of the lessons and the schoolwork at home, and exactly what the kids are learning.
Yes.
Nothing gets. There's no shady business. There's nothing being taught that you're not aware of. Yeah. Teachers are very open, and they communicate with you daily, and we just love it. And we're kind of on the fence about transitioning and just doing a full school. So that's great.
Well, yeah, I love that. I just feel like people are more aware of those issues these days and protecting our kids,
especially after COVID. And there was a lot of virtual online schooling, and I think parents it just peeked behind the curtain of what the kids were actually being taught or not being taught in cases, and some of the things, and I think it opened a lot of parents' eyes to some of the agendas that are being pushed, and some of the things that are you don't necessarily want your kids to learn, or some things that you do want them to learn that they're not being taught. And I think there's it's growing in popularity for sure. Homeschooled, so, or at least private school. So that's awesome. I think COVID was kind of a blessing in disguise in many ways.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I don't know. I've always done things differently in my whole life. So I feel like just building a house and raising kids the way that you want is just, I don't know, part of our family DNA now,
I mean, and that's very evident in how y'all lived your lives, it seems, building your own house and building it the way you want it done. And the style and the material that you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I said, that's the American dream right there. And I'm jealous of you guys. That's awesome.
Well, you could do limestone home. I don't know. Maybe
I know a guy.
I know a
guy. That was probably one of the only podcast episodes that my wife listened to. And he was like, "Oh, that's amazing. That's so cool." She's like, "I want a limestone house now." I'm like, "Yeah. That's awesome."
Oh yeah, there's a lot of. I've had some guys come over, like like I remember like our well driller or something, right?
Yeah.
They're like, they kind of stand back and look at it like, They start asking questions about it, and like, you can see their wheels start turning a little bit.
It's very interesting, but I think what y'all have done is great, and I don't think I could compliment you enough. I've probably over complimented you, so
no. Thanks for.
It's getting late, and you guys, I really appreciate your time. Forgive me on the hassles with the virtual Zoom call here. It's technology is not my forte, so I appreciate your patience, and I enjoyed talking with you guys, and hopefully we can connect again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you. All right, y'all take it easy.
All right.